Hello guys and welcome back to another FPL video. My name is FPL MEERKAT and today I've got my season review for the 2022-23 season. And what a season it's been, with a lot of highs and lows. It's certainly been a season that's been all over the place. Are you a little relieved that the season's finished, that we can get a little bit of a break just before we get into the next season's content? If you've enjoyed the content on this channel, please get subscribed, and I'll be making some content when we get the fixtures and the announcements for the following season. So get subscribed to the channel so you don't miss that when the content comes out. But yeah, let's dive straight into the review of how this season has gone for me. I just got back from FPLMeets in London at the weekend. It was such an amazing time. I'm really glad that I went. I travelled all the way down from Gloucester to get there just for I had the weekend free. Let's go and enjoy the time, and I would highly recommend it. And I just wanted to give a little shout out to all of the creators who I met there. I'm really sorry if I've missed some names here, but starting from the top left going across, we have FPL Focal, FPL Mate, Fran, FPL Juice, Pricey, Fella, Midnight Mule, Nima, who was the organizer for the whole thing. Great job he did. Lynn, Dread, Sim, Panico, Copite Saint, Lynn's Blue-Footed Booby, Ronadrid, Dashhund, Witty Name, Dan Cross, Pilkington, Stoop Tiger, Chapo, Scott, James Stevenson, Timbers, Cuckoo, Claire, Graduates, Trophy FPL, and Greyhead. So if I've missed any of your names there who I met, I'm really sorry. Get down in the comments and give me a right telling off, because there were a lot of you to try and remember. So I'm really sorry about that if I have missed any names. But yeah, it was an incredibly good time to watch the final game of the season unravel. So in terms of my final rank, I finished 335th. 335th, I'd love that. 335,386, a lot of threes there. So just outside the top 300k, or just in the top 3% of the game, which I'm okay with. The aim for this season was top 100k. I didn't achieve that, but this was actually, as you can see there, my highest overall rank all season. It was a real uphill battle. I had a very poor start, and yeah, this ended up being the highest rank I've had. So if the season kept going past game week 38, then maybe I could have climbed a bit higher. But yeah, I'm all right with the fact that, yeah, this was the highest rank that I achieved all season. My best game week rank was inside the top 100k for game week 34. I believe that was the week where I used my bench boost, the double game week, where I got that extra 13 points off the bench boost. And yeah, that catapulted me up the ranks for that one game week. And the second chance league, as you can see there, just inside the top 300k. I did have a much better end to the season than I did from the start. So yeah, it was very much the start of the season that let me down. That refresh, really, I gained the rank. So yeah, last season I finished 34k. So yeah, much better start, much better rank last season. I've had a bit of a worse season this time around, but yeah, I've really thoroughly enjoyed making the content on the channel for the first time as a FPL content creator. So getting into actually how game week 38 went, it was an amazing event at FPLMeets, watching all the games happen simultaneously, some of which on the TV, and just news flying absolutely everywhere as it was all going down. What was really annoying, though, is I had the armband on Jota. I was thinking I want to take a differential punt on the captaincy for the final day of the season, but we didn't get anything concrete about Jota starting, so I didn't want to take the risk. I didn't remove him from my team, but I captained Salah instead, and yeah, that was a bit of a shame. I believe if I did captain Jota, I would have been inside the top 300k, so that's a bit of a shame there. And obviously the big miss was Harry Kane, who absolutely demolished my rank. I had no easy way to get to him. My one move that I made was Grealish to Rodrigo. I did say I didn't really want to take any hits, and we got news of most of my players starting, so I just made the one move from Grealish, the only player I knew who definitely wasn't going to play. And unfortunately, Wilson and Estupinan both didn't play. My bench, most of the players there also got benched, so yeah, a bit of a benching nightmare, but it was a nice green arrow to end the season of about 35k to give me 2,457 points overall. Obviously, the worst performer there, Trippier, as well, getting 0 points. That was quite funny, watching everyone's reaction, because most of us own Trippier, and him scoring an own goal, was a bit of a nightmare for most people's teams. But yeah, so it was an all right end to the season. A nice little green arrow there. Obviously, I'll be looking to improve for next season and obviously get off to a better start, which is what really left me down. Speaking of which, going into the actual season, how it went game week by game week. As you can see there, the start of the season, I was at 4.5 million. It was the start that really left me down. Going against Haaland at the start, I did transfer him in immediately, but then, if you guys remember, I wildcarded and I brought in Darwin Núñez for his red card, and yeah, that massively set me back. As you can see there, I was gradually climbing the ranks. I got into the top 1 million for the first time in game week 11. But yeah, I then, things started to go pretty dire. Game week 13 especially was when things started to go really backwards. It was a gradual, it was definitely a lot of ups and downs this season, really hovering around that 1.5 million rank as well from after game week 13, game week 14 onwards. So yeah, as you can see there, it really was the start to the season that let me down. You can see there as well for game week 17, 44 transfers made. That was because we all got a free wildcard essentially, and for some reason it didn't count as a wildcard. It's just you can make free transfers, so all the transfers are listed there. As you can see, my team value plummeted that week as well. I was a bit too eager to mess around with the team. That's certainly something to work on for next season. If I'm wildcarding, don't make too many drastic moves like that. But yeah, and then moving on to the second half of the season, obviously much better, climbing out of the million into the top 1 million. Obviously that huge green arrow there in game week 26. I remember that game week very well. That was when everyone wildcarded. I didn't, and I held on to all my Liverpool players that catapulted my rank. And then they did terrible against Bournemouth, so then my rank plummeted back down straight after. So yeah, that was really the peak. It wasn't the highest overall rank I had all season, though. I managed to get that in game week 38. But yeah, it was a very much an up and down area. I was just gradually, as you can see there, gradually increasing my rank, getting better and better and better. But I feel like I learnt from the mistakes I made earlier on in the season, but it just wasn't enough to climb back from all of the mistakes I made. And as you can see there, I got a bit aggressive with my transfers as well. I took quite a few hits with making transfers, and I don't think this negatively affected me at all, because all the transfers I made were pretty much profits. I'll get onto that into a bit, but I wasn't. That's something that a lot of people will say is a mistake, is taking too many hits from transfers, whereas I think that was a mistake at the start of the season. I was a lot more methodical about it getting near to the end of the season because of all the doubles that were coming up. And I was almost guaranteed to make a profit in terms of points from making those transfers. So not being afraid to take hits near the end of the season, but not taking those hits at the beginning of the season, I think, is the lesson I've learnt from that. I've also got my FPL juice glass there that kind of gave to me at the FPL meets. So getting on to the individual player analysis. So here are the top 15 players who got me the most points over this season. Obviously, number one, Erling Haaland, getting me 402 points there. That's probably a lower total than most people, to be honest. I didn't captain him as many times, and I didn't own him as many times as many other people. And Salah, obviously there, I captained him a lot of times, getting me a good amount of points there too. But I think this is a highlighting of where my season went a bit wrong, is that there's not many players who are massively high on the points. You'll look at the total points for most players this season, and I mean, none of these players come in anywhere near. I think I was far too rotational with my players. Trippier, obviously there with 148 in fourth. Rashford, obviously a great pickup there as well. David Raya as well, really probably my player of the season, to be honest. Having him for most of the season, getting 92 points for me, the highest scoring goalkeeper in the game, I believe. He was an incredibly good pickup there. Trent, highs and lows from him as well. Matoma, obviously great value for this season. Martinelli and Saka, we know the value that they provided throughout the season. Cancelo at number 10. Isn't that something to marvel at? Cancelo, despite leaving under halfway through the season, was my 10th highest scorer in my team with 70 points. De Bruyne as well at 11th. I barely remember owning De Bruyne, but yeah, he's there. Darwin Núñez, who was really a thorn in my side the whole season, to be honest. Estupiñán I didn't own for many weeks, but got a good amount of points. Fernandes as well, with 44 points. I started him 3 times. So the fact that he's even made onto this list with 3 starts is very impressive. And another Arsenal attacker there in Gabriel Jesus. No Ødegaard as well, who I believe I owned the most out of any of the Arsenal attackers. And yeah, he didn't even make it on the list. Yeah, he really wasn't a good transfer. In terms of number of weeks played, oh no, sorry, I'm wrong. Ødegaard's down there in 10, but he's still there for the most weeks played. Yeah, so this is probably the most. This is where my season went wrong the most, is not playing players enough, making too many transfers and selling them, because the likes of Salah, Haaland, Trippier that I didn't own for a massive amount of time. And just transferring, like there's at least 10 game weeks where I didn't own all of them. So yeah, and obviously I think Danny Ward was probably my most owned player, but obviously this is only counting the weeks that I played them. Raya as well, 21. It was nice to just have that goalkeeper position locked down for the majority of the season. I think I'll definitely be doing that in the future, just sticking with a goalkeeper through thick and thin, because what we've seen this season is there's a lot of shock results to the big teams. So I think the best strategy for a goalkeeper is just picking one for the season. And yes, you could transfer him for a goalkeeper that has a lot of doubles coming up, but I think just sticking with the same goalkeeper is a good strategy. Is probably what I've learned from this season. Yeah, Rashford there as well. Trent again. Martinelli with quite a few games played, to be honest, but not so high on the points. Cancelo up there as well. Núñez very high up there. And you can see there, no sign of Fernandes. Andres Pereira as well, who didn't get me as many points, but he was a really good asset just to have that consistently ticked over, who was cheap that I could put on the bench. So he's been a real hero this season, to be honest. And apparently I owned De Bruyne for 10 game weeks. I do not remember that in the slightest. That must have been nearer the start of the season. But yeah, and then moving on to the combined bits, the points per game. So the real value players I had this season, obviously Haaland at number 1, 15.5, despite the massive amount of games he played in my team, a massive amount of points he got. And Fernandes, who really carried the team there with 14.7 points per time I played him, only playing him 3 times. So yeah, definitely a player that I want to keep my eye on a bit more. As he worked out very well. The same with Rashford as well. Every time I had him, he basically returned for me. Salah, who I think I just owned him so many times, and he hauled a couple times that his points shot up. McAllister as well at number 5. I think I played him twice this whole season, and obviously in the doubles was when I played him. And yeah, it got me 19 points in total from those 2 appearances. Grealish as well at number 6. I think I owned him for 8 or 9 weeks, but he only played 3 times for me, because he either came off because he wasn't playing, or I just put him on the bench. And yeah, I basically called every time that he scored. So yeah, good. Maybe it is good to have rotation players if you can get it right every time. In the team. Matoma there, good value. Luke Shaw as well, and Ciso there, who was a great pick in terms of value, getting the points there. Only played him twice, but yeah, really got some good points for me and some good memories that he's made for me in Ciso. De Gea, actually my best value goalkeeper for the few appearances that I gave him, obviously returned well in the double game weeks. Mahrez there, surprisingly, didn't own him that much this season, but he did obviously return quite heavily in one of those weeks. Martinez as well, the goalkeeper for Aston Villa. Willock as well, for his 1 appearance in the team, getting 7 points, makes it onto the list. And Saka and Kepa, surprisingly as well, making it onto the top 15. So moving on to transfers. Now, hold your horses, because 100 transfers there sounds like an absolutely insane amount, but it is actually only 56, because I made 44 transfers during that game week 17 free period, so I made a lot of transfers during then. So it is basically 56 transfers that I made. 92 points I've lost from taking to making transfers, which is 23 hits in total, which again is very aggressive. It sounds like a lot, but I have actually gained a net transfer net points of 102. So I gained 194 points from my transfers, minus off with the cost is actually 102 points that I gained in total from making transfers. Again, does that reflect on how good the transfers were or how bad the picking of the players was, getting them in the first place? But in terms of the highlights, definitely the highlight was transferring out Haaland, which was a brave move for that double game week, getting in Callum Wilson, who got 24 points. That was definitely the highest return that I got from a transfer all season. Game week 23, getting rid of Fernandez for Mahrez, who that was the week that he hauled for me, getting 14 points there. Was a very, very handsome return from Mahrez. And in game week 29, moving on Strauch, who I remember getting in for his double for Leeds and was just absolutely terrible. In fact, no, he wasn't even terrible. He got injured during was it the first or the second game? So he didn't even play for me, really. Got 2 points. And then I transferred in Zuma, who then got a clean sheet and then scored a header to make it 12 points, which was a great transfer as well. Taking a punt on one of the West Ham defenders, and the correct one as well. Actually, no, Ergaard, I believe, did also return, so either one of those would have been a good move. That was when a risk really did pay off. But when a risk didn't pay off, game week 3, the worst transfer I made all season, was in game week 3. I just wildcarded in game week 2. I had Harrison on the wildcard. He blanked. I didn't like the look of him. I liked the look of Luis Diaz. I got rid of Harrison. He got 14 points in his game week 3 game, and Diaz got 2 points. So yeah, minus 12 there was really, really punishing. And that is a lesson that I've definitely learned, is that be reluctant on transferring out players who are playing well. They're playing well. Just give them a little bit more time. Because when it comes to transfers, you can always think about a transfer as a -4. That's what transfers are worth. So is the player that you're getting in absolutely going to score at least more than 4 points? In this case, it definitely wasn't. Game week 34, I'll give myself a little bit of slack for this one. Ake was injured for the first game of a double game week. He then came back for the second and scored a goal, netting him 15 points. Stones played the first game, only got 2 points because City lost the clean sheet, and then he kept a clean sheet, didn't get any bonus or anything like that, and only got 8 points. So yeah, that was a pretty bad one, but I mean, everyone was going to make that transfer. It was very unfortunate. And then getting rid of Jesus, going against the grain again, getting in Tony for 1 point in game week 9 as well. Another -7 there in terms of the transfers. So yeah, the highs were high, but the lows were pretty low when it came to transfers. Moving on to captaincy. So the average points per captaincy that I got was 17.1. So the average score from the player that I was playing was around about 8.5, 8 or 9 points was the captain, which was pretty good. Captaincy success 27 times out of 37. It's only 37, of course, because we had game week, was it game week 7 that was completely called off because of the Queen's death. Nobody played during that game, so I haven't included it in the success rate. So yeah, 73% success rate, which was pretty good. I think that's better than most seasons for me. But yeah, 10 times getting it wrong. Most of the times, sometimes, I mean, the Matoma captaincy that I gave him when he got 5 points in a double game week is also counted as a success in this, because any more than 4 points is counted as a success. So yeah, not too sure how much I'd include that, but yeah, the times captaining the highest scorer in my team, only 32% of the time did I captain the highest scorer in the team, only 12 times in total. So yeah, that could be a bit higher. Only about a third of the time was I captaining the highest scorer in my team. The highest captaincies that I had, Game Week 9, Haaland's absolute demolition of Man United, I think that was in Game Week 9. I was very, very happy I gave him the armband for that one. I think a lot of people went against Haaland that week because they thought Man United might be a bit of a tougher fixture for him. But yeah, very glad I gave him that one. Game Week 22, the Rashford 40-pointer was brilliant. That's when I wildcarded and I decided to go for Rashford rather than Haaland on the captaincy, and he did quite. It wasn't a massive outscoring, but yeah, it was a very decent. Very decent outscoring he had there for 40 points there. And then another Haaland hat-trick in Game Week 21 for 34 points. So yeah, Haaland pretty much dominating the top of the captaincy. And then you can see where my season went wrong with the lowest captaincies. Salah getting 0 points in Game Week 27. That was, of course, after Liverpool gave Man United an absolute thrashing. And I kept all my Liverpool assets and I got ahead of myself and I decided to captain Salah against Bournemouth where he missed a penalty, which, yeah, kind of shows a massive amount of variance this season. If that penalty goes in, I might be 100k higher than I actually am. It looks like a brilliant move. But yeah, that was made even worse by the fact that was a double game week for Brentford and Brighton. And all of Mitoma, McAllister, March and Tony got double digits in that game week. So yeah, going for a differential captain was terrible. And I've learnt from my mistake to not captain a single game week player in a double game week when there are obvious options for the double game week. So yeah, that was a really poor move on my behalf. Game week 2, Salah captaincy blank there for 4 points. That was obviously made worse by the Darwin Núñez red card. And I think Haaland did score in that game as well. So yeah, that was a poor move by me. And then Haaland's blank in game week 35 as well. I thought I had to feature Haaland there because it wasn't always perfect with him in the captaincy, as we can see from this table that I've made. So Haaland, I captained 16 times. I have 9 different captains here. I want to know how many different captains you guys have had this season. I captained him 16 times, an 88% success rate, 314 points gained from the captains times I gave him captaincy, which yeah led to 19.6 points per time. So he averaged a goal and 3 bonus basically every single time I captained him. So yeah, absolutely incredible output there from Haaland. Salah, I captained 12 times, 50% success rate. That's probably the biggest reason why I didn't do too well this season, and I did so well last season, is because Salah was just so consistent that season. You could just give the armband to him every single time and he'd return every single time. And in hindsight, that's what Haaland has done this season. Just so consistent with the points. Only 110 points gained from the 12 times I captained him, meaning 9.2 points per time I captained him, which is less than 5. So yeah, not a very good success rate for Salah. I just captained him far too many times. Rashford, 3 times captained, 100% success rate, 94 points gained. As you can see there, nearly the same amount as Salah, despite the fact I only captained him 3 times, giving over 30 points per time I captained him. So yeah, really should have captained Rashford a few more times. I think it worked out every single time for me. Mitoma, exactly the same, 100% success rate. Obviously, he absolutely hauled one time with the I think it was 28 points he got that one time, and then obviously 5 points, 10 points captained the second time. So yeah, it worked out very well one time and then not so well the other time, but yeah. And then the one time captain Fernandes obviously was a huge return. That was in the recent game week that he got 22 points for me. De Bruyne worked out well when I captained him that one time. Kane as well, who's probably been the biggest reason why I haven't done so well this season. I think I only owned Kane 3 times. I think I owned him for the very first game week. I owned him for my free hit team. And then there might have been one other time that I owned him. But yeah, I really should have gone for Kane more. That was on the free hit team that I captained him. And yeah, I was a bit disappointed with the just the 6 points from him. And then the 2 captaincies that I had 0% success rate, Darwin Núñez and Heung-min Son, who have both been huge disappointments this season for my team and just in general in terms of their FPL returns. So moving on to the chips for this season. So the first chip that I used was my first wildcard in Game Week 2. This was the team that I had here. Really interesting to look back on the players that I had. And to be honest, this was a waste of a chip. Most of the big players you can see here I already had in my team. I remember swapping Saka to Martinelli, but the likes of Trent, Raya, Cancelo, Jesus, and Salah I already had in my team. The only major switches I was making was Kane to Haaland, and then I got in Darwin Núñez as well. And yeah, so this was a pretty poor wild card, to be honest, especially with the fact that Núñez got himself red carded, which is, it's very unlucky, isn't it? He looked good. He looked really good when he came off the bench in that very first game. So yeah, we didn't know about his heatedness until that game. 66 points from the wild card. The previous team, if I'd done 0 transfers, this is even without doing Kane to Haaland, would have gotten 66 points. So I gained 0 immediately from this wild card. So yeah, it was a huge mistake on my behalf to wild card this early. The only way it would have worked is if Harrison and Núñez went absolutely wild with their scores yet again. Yeah, so that's certainly a learning point to take away from this season. Don't use your wild card that early, especially when you don't have the problems. That's why we spend so long making our Game Week 1 teams, so that we don't have to do this. So yeah, it was basically a uphill battle from this point. So the second chip that I used, despite us now being in the second half of the season, was my second wildcard. This was after wildcarding in Game Week 17, where the start of the restart I didn't do very well. I then wildcarded to fix some problems. Now, this wildcard I think I did use very well. It was just a shame that the wildcard became so useful so much later on in the season. But I don't disagree with me using the wildcard at this point. As you can see there, Kane on the bench as well. That was because he was playing Man City, and I just thought he was the weakest attacker in my side. And yeah, that's painful to look at when you look at the points. But yeah, 83 points from this wildcard. Again, the previous team, funnily enough, would have gotten 66 points if I hadn't wildcarded, hadn't made a transfer. So yeah, a 17-point gain immediately. And obviously, yeah, I captained Rashford in that game week, which was a huge plus. So first wildcard, far too early. Second wildcard, it was still very early, but I think it was a correct use of it to amend the poor start that I had. And it really raised up my rank from that point. Moving on to the triple captain, that was my next chip, the Game Week 23 double for Haaland. He did outscore the more popular triple captain option, but yeah, it was still for Haaland's output. It was not a very good return, was it? 10 points, tripled to 30. Obviously, 10 points immediate gain there. There were certainly better times to use the triple captaincy chip. Better times for Haaland as well. Even the previous game week with the double from Rashford would have been a better choice. But I think the main reason was we all saw how incredible Haaland was in a single game week. I think we were all just so set on that, yes, he'll absolutely smash it in one of the double game weeks. But that wasn't to be. Obviously, hindsight tells us that, yeah, that might not have been the best choice. But when you looked at it in the current time, it looked like a good move. So yeah, the best chance to use my triple captain chip was game week 36. Wilson with that absolute haul, getting 24 points. I was never going to use it then. I could have potentially used it on Rashford for his double game week. That would have been the more realistic at best time for me to use the chip. Yeah, that was one hell of a double game week though, wasn't it? With Mahrez getting 14, Saka 15. Yeah, absolutely huge scores there. But yeah, a bit of a blank on the triple captain. It wasn't the end of the world though. He did get 10 points. It was just low for his standards, wasn't it? And I remember he got an assist in the first game, didn't he? And then he got subbed off early, which yeah. So I'll keep that in check for next season's triple captain chip. Moving on to the free hit chip, which was the next one that I used in the game week 28 blank. This was in, I'd set up my team because I couldn't wildcard in game week 26. I'd set up my team that I basically had to free hit in this game week. Funnily enough, the previous team would have gotten 41 points, despite the fact I would have, pardon me, despite the fact I would have only had 4 players. Or 3 maybe, because Saka would have been my captain and he would have basically been all of my points. And unfortunately, I captained Kane, and yeah, that was a pretty massive swing. I thought Saka was easily the second best choice. So yeah, really, really disappointed on that swing there. Could have been huge for my rank if I'd captained Saka in that game week. But yeah, 19-point immediate game. I'd structured my team to free hit in this game week, so obviously it was appropriate to use the free hit chip. But again, maybe my overall strategy could have been better to avoid that even being the case. And then the final chip was the bench boost, my highest score of the season, 133 points, a 13-point immediate gain from the bench boost. Again, it probably wasn't the best bench boost in hindsight. It was a real shame that Zuma got injured in the first game. He got substituted off. Trippier and Raya both losing their clean sheets to Nottingham Forest and Southampton was also really unfortunate, to be honest, that they only got 2 points each. But Solanke got 8 points. He made the bench boost all worth it because I definitely would have benched him. He was last on my bench there. This would have been the appropriate bench here. So yeah, I was all right with this bench boost. It wasn't the end of the world. It was a nice little rank rise. It was sort of my last ditch attempt to get into the top 100k, and it was a nice green arrow, but it wasn't big enough to get anywhere near it. So yeah, it was a bit of a shame there, and obviously some huge hauls from a lot of players there. It meant that the bench boost wasn't really worth it because if you remove the bench boost here, 120 points is still pretty massive. Yeah, so the best chance to bench boost for me was, funnily enough, in game week 13, where I believe I had Andreas, Ward, I think, kept a clean sheet, and I believe Nico Williams, either scored or kept a clean sheet. So yeah, all of my bench fodder players returned in that 1 week. So yeah, I was never intending on bench boosting in that game week, but funnily enough, that was my highest bench score, and I believe this bench boost was my 5th highest bench score of the season, so not too bad. But again, I think that pretty much defines my season, doesn't it? It was all right. Moving on to team ownership. So this is a little graphic that I've got here, just showing the amount of time that I owned players for. So obviously we had 38 game weeks. We could own a maximum of 3 players from each team. So the maximum amount of players, so if I had, for example, 1 Man City player in my team, that would count as 1 point. If I had 2 Man City players in my game week in my team, that would count as 2 points. So the maximum points you can have over the season is 114. So what I've done is I've added up all the points. I've divided it by 114 and then given it a percentage here. So as you can see here, Man City was by far and away the biggest amount that I had out of any team. I believe only on the free hit was the only time that I didn't have 2 or more Man City players in my team. I never even had 1 in my team for a single moment. Obviously, Haaland was the set and forget one. De Bruyne was in the team for a bit. Grealish, Mahrez. Alvarez was a player I talked about all the time, but I never actually got him in. But yeah, Liverpool as well. I think if Liverpool have a bad season, I probably have a bad season. I go a bit too heavy on the Liverpool players. They were the second highest that I've had there. Arsenal as well, over 50% of the season, the maximum amount that I've had them for. Brentford as well, really high up with 39.5%. Obviously, Raya being in my team for a massive amount of time. De Silva was a bench player that I had for a massive amount of time. And also Tony I had for a considerable bit as well. So yeah, very high there. Man United was not as high as I expected, to be honest, considering how the likes of De Gea, Shaw, Fernandes and Rashford I owned for snippets of the season, but obviously not a lot. Newcastle and Leicester, a third of the season I owned their assets for. Brighton being down in 8th there with 31.6%. I was actually quite surprised by, given the amount of doubles they had. But I did look through the statistics and I really didn't have any Brighton players for the start of the season. I don't think many of us had many Brighton players. It was really when they started to switch it on with the likes of Mitoma, and of course they got a massive amount of doubles, which meant that they had loads of blanks near the start of the season. So yeah, that was when we all decided to triple up on Brighton assets, essentially. Fulham as well, pretty high. The likes of Mitrovic I had for a while. Andreas, of course, on the bench. Some bench players here and there. And then we get into it was basically those 9 teams making up most of my season. Leeds having a little bit of ownership there. Obviously, the likes of Harrison, which didn't work out too well. Rodrigo, I believe I had for a couple games. And then Greenwood and Somerville, the bench players. Wolves as well, 14% is actually pretty high until I remember that Bueno was on my bench for most of the season. That's pretty much all of the ownership there been made up by Wolves. Nottingham Forest as well. Nico Williams was on the bench for most of it. Spurs 9.6%. That's probably where my season's been let down, is not going for Kane too much, and then having Son for snippets of the season. So yeah, didn't do too well there. West Ham, Zuma for the 9.6%. Villa with Ollie Watkins. I think Villa will be a team I target a lot more next season. Chelsea 7%. I never wanted Chelsea players. I know a lot of people like Reece James, but I just can't deal with his injury woes. I'd much rather have a player that just consistently starts all the time. Everton, a low amount there. Bournemouth, that was Solanke, I believe, is all that percent was. Crystal Palace, I'm not even too sure. I think Anderson I had for a little bit of time. I think that's what Crystal Palace was. And Southampton there with 0.9%, which equates to 1. One game week, I had 1 player in my team. I believe that was my free hit team where I had, I think it was one of their players on the bench. I believe that's the only time I've had a Southampton player in my team. So moving on to my team of the season. So my own FPL team of the season. I've gone for a 4-5-1 formation, which is quite funny because I don't think I've ever played a 4-5-1 formation this season. The reason for it, though, is because I only wanted 1 striker in the team because I've not really had any good strikers this entire season apart from the one obvious one. So, yeah, if you are like me and you didn't go for Kane for basically the whole season, who else have you got as in your striker position for the team of the season? Because there really was barely anyone to pick from. But so, starting off in goal, I've gone with David Raya, pretty obvious for me, has been my goalkeeper for most of the season. A really good, safe pair of hands. He'll probably be my goalkeeper next season as well. I've got a horrible feeling he might be 5.5 million though, like Martinez was when he had a good season. So it might take some fine-tuning to get him in. If he's 5.5 million, I really hope he's 5 million because they made the likes of Alisson and Edison 5.5 this season. If he's 5 million, he'll probably be in my team. If he's 4.5, he definitely will be, but I don't think there's any chance he's 4.5 million. But yeah, raking up the save points as well, even at times when he's lost the clean sheets. Yeah, definitely goes straight in the team here. For the defence, the first one, obviously Trippier. I didn't have him for as long of the season as a lot of you might have had, but he still raked in a lot of points for me over the weeks that I've owned him, and it's been just a phenomenal asset, isn't he? Trent as well, the next defender. A bit of an off season for Trent, but he's done a lot better than some of the other premium defenders this season. But yeah, 91 points. Cancelo makes it into the defense as well. Bit of a surprising one there, given that he didn't play much in the season. But yeah, he's actually one of the best defenders has been in my team because I've made so many transfers. And Estupiñán as well, making it in with 53 points, has had some absolute hauls in some game weeks. I thought I had to include Estupiñán into the team. Going into the midfield, Mohamed Salah is here, reluctantly so, because he has caused me so much pain this season, but he has got me he's got me over 10% of my total score, so I've got to include him there. It's been a bit of an off season for him, but he's still returned well. I mean, 50% of the time I captained him, he did well, so yeah, I thought I'd definitely mention him. It's an off season by his standards, but yeah, still very good. Rashford, the next midfielder, every time I've captained him, he's done well. Every time I've got him in, he's done well. Been a great player for me this season, especially in that really consistent period he had. getting in the points and having the faith in him to captain him over Haaland. Mitoma, been such great value for me this season. He definitely had to be in the team. He was a great... I went for March initially, but I swapped to Mitoma when I saw how good he was playing. It's been interesting to watch this season with the... people who are very obsessed with stats flip-flopping between March and Mitoma based on what the XG has been saying, which I found quite funny, because if you see that a player has got good expected goals, it's because he probably has been doing well in the previous game. So you use XG as a metric to not be reactionary, but that's exactly what XG provides, is a reactionary response as to what's happened. And Mitoma's had high expected goals from previous game weeks, and then shock horror, he then started doing well and his XG went up. Who would have guessed it? So yeah, Mitoma definitely goes in, especially for good value as well. Saka makes it into the team over Martinelli, just because I got less points from Saka, but I think I played him about, I think it was in the previous slide, 3 or 4 times less. So yeah, he definitely worked a lot better for me in the times that I owned him. So yeah, he gets into the team. And I haven't gone with Martinelli in midfield. I've actually gone for Fernandes, just purely based on how many points he got per game for me. And then, of course, up front, Erling Haaland. How could it be anyone else? 402 points for me this season. I think that's nearly 20% of my score has been from Haaland. Absolutely insane, despite the fact that most of you have probably got more points from Haaland than I did. An absolutely insane amount of points. In terms of the bench, Kepa, surprisingly, my second best goalkeeper. Raya probably had better, De Gea had better points per game, but Kepa I had for longer, and of course he got those famous 10-point hauls in a couple game weeks, so yeah, I had to include him there. A shout out to Ward as well for being a 4 million playing goalkeeper, despite the fact he didn't do very well. It was still nice to have that in the team. Zuma I've included as well as my 5th best defender. There wasn't many to choose from, but I didn't own him for many weeks, but he still got a good amount of points for my team in the limited amount of time that I had him. Jesus I've got as the second striker, because really I couldn't put Nunez in. I simply couldn't. I think he was the second highest scoring striker for me, but I just couldn't put him in because he just hasn't been good enough for me. He was one of the main reasons I haven't done well this season. So yeah, Jesus, for the limited amount of time that I had him, those I think 8 weeks I had him for, especially that 19-pointer that he got, did me well. And I've put in Ciso as well, just because he's a nice cheap option to stick on the bench. Was amazingly good value. Some great memories that I've got from him from the 2 times that I started him. And yeah, I just thought it felt like I put him on. Wilson came pretty close, but I went through the stats and it was only really that one game week where he got 24 points. Every other time he blanked for me. So yeah, I couldn't really put him on based on one score. So yeah, I went for Enciso instead, just because of the value, and he's a really good player. I think I might consider him next season based on what he's priced at, and hopefully he's a midfielder, because he hasn't been playing up front, he's been playing at right wing. But after the team of the season comes the moment that most of you have probably been waiting for, the biggest trolls for me in the season. So hopefully I've covered up the players, and I'll reveal them one by one. So I've got my top 5 biggest trolls here. So at number 5, just for anyone who doesn't know, a troll player is someone who you basically have gotten in and has done really badly for you. So opposite of team of the season is the biggest trolls I've had this season. So at number 5, we've got De Silva. Now, it's a bit unfortunate for him because he was a bench fodder player, so he never played. I had him for 4 game weeks, game week 1 to 4. And he returned 17 points on my bench. He scored twice. He had an amazing start to the season. And I owned him, and yeah, I never played him. People got him in as well after his goal in game week 1, and then got his points in game week 2, which was so frustrating for me. But yeah, I think I was trolled pretty heavily by him there, how I never played him, and he was one of the only players who was returning for me consistently, 3rd on the bench. So yeah, that was a bit of a pain for him there. But you might be thinking, yeah, that's not too bad of a troll there. Don't worry, we're getting significantly worse in terms of the trolls. Honestly, going back through my season and looking at some of these players gave me a bit of a headache because the anger that had sparked from me returned. So moving on to number 4, again not too bad, but Anderson. I owned him for 5 game weeks from 12 to 16. I played him 4 times in that 5 game week period. He blanked in every single one of them. He lost his clean sheet in every single one. And then I benched him one time. That I owned him and he kept a clean sheet. He got 6 points. So yeah, that's 0% success rate for him from 5 game weeks. The one time I didn't play him, he didn't get points. So yeah, again, another differential that I thought was pretty good. Crystal Palace's defense was playing all right. And incredibly unlucky. Speaking of incredibly unlucky, though, number 3 is Mbeumo, who some of you might have had and thought, hang on, he's done pretty well for me. Not for me. I owned him for 2 weeks, game week 20 to 21. This was the period when Tony was injured. So he was playing on his own, and I thought, hey, he looks like quite a good differential here. He blanked twice whilst Tony was out. Tony then came back into the side in game week 22, I believe. He then returned. He returned 12 points in game week 19. I transferred him in. He blanked twice. I transferred him out in game week 22. He returned 12 points. Again, he scored a brace in both of those games. Absolutely ridiculous. No, I think maybe one time. I think he got a goal and an assist, actually. But yeah, absolutely ridiculous, honestly. Got him in for 4 points. And in the 2 weeks either side, he got 24 points. So yeah, again, massive variance. Very, very unlucky. These top 2, though, nothing even comes close to these top 2 places in terms of how heavily I was trolled. At number 2, we have Nick Pope, who I had for 4 game weeks. I had him from 22 to 25. Newcastle had been on the back of, I think it was 6 consecutive clean sheets. I believe it was 8 in 10. 8 in 10 clean sheets he'd got on. So I finally decided to double up on the Newcastle defence because their fixtures looked very good. In that period, Newcastle kept 0 clean sheets. After keeping 8 clean sheets in the last 10, they then kept 0 in 4. And I had the double Newcastle defence. And of course, you've probably seen on Twitter, everyone going, well, if you just own Trippier, you actually want them to concede. Well, I didn't. And just to wrap it all up, he then got a red card in game week 24. So he then got a -3, I believe it was, in my team. 2 points he got me from 3 games. An absolutely horrific transfer that was. Nick Pope was one of my worst players this season. He was the second worst player for me this season. He wasn't the number 1, though. You look at that and you think that's bad. Yeah, at least he got me points. At least I can say that. Even though he lost the clean sheets in all 3 of the games that I played him in, for I think game week 25 I benched him, he still got me points. He got me 2 free points. Number one was a player who some of you might have also got in, who might have been your biggest troll this season as well, and you can relate to this, who not only didn't get me any points, actually lost me points overall. Of course, it's James Tarkowski. Game week 25 to 26 for the double, I had him for 25. I transferred him in for a hit. He then got back-to-back 0 pointers. Despite playing 3 games within 2 game weeks, he didn't get a single point for my team. I then transferred him out for a -4, and he returned in the following game, getting a clean sheet and 2 bonus points for, very ironically, 8 points. He cost me 8 points in total to get him in for a hit, transfer him out for a hit, and then he returned 8 points when I got rid of him. That if that isn't trolling, I don't know what is. By far the biggest troll that I've had this season. So congratulations, James Tarkowski. You are my biggest troll of the season. Wow. Don't think I'll ever be getting him back in. And then finally, to wrap up the season review, is the league, the mini league. So throughout the season, I have been running a mini league on my channel. I've been putting the team code on on some of the videos. I haven't actually done it on my Twitter. I've never, I think, put my league code out on Twitter. It was only for people who have watched the YouTube videos. So thank you very much for all of you who have joined this league, who must have watched one of my videos to know what the code was. So I've got some awards here. Just on the left here as well is the team of the mini league, which I announce every single video. I think it's definitely something that I'll carry on going into the next season. And I was hoping that we'd have a winner for this award, the most team of the game weeks that we've had in the mini league. Unfortunately, there were 11 of you who were the team of the game week twice. 11 of you were the team of the game week twice. Nobody got it 3 times. I was really hoping in the last game week that someone would do it, but no one did. So Graham Buchanan, Dragan Stanojevic, Mohamed Naim, Eddie Mijetovic, Jared Felon, Dow Boy, Aidan Hudgett, Lion Shilu, Vegard Hovden, Umi Shoryu, and Sin Hin Lim. All 11 of you managed to score the highest team of the game week twice. So congratulations to all 11 of you for winning that award. I was going to give the award to Graham because he was the first to do it, and I think that was more impressive when there were when it was earlier on in the season to do it. But yeah, I couldn't decide it. So yeah, all 11 of you have been featured there. So well done. The winner of the league, though, the winner overall was Dixie Meekings with 2,629 points. The winner of the league overall. So congratulations to you, Dixie, and thank you very much for joining the league. The high score, though, Dixie hadn't actually joined in Game Week 1. So I've also featured here the highest score who had been in the league since Game Week 1. And that goes to Fifi Eguier, who I believe has never been the team of the Game Week in the mini league. They've never had the highest score in the mini league of the week. And yet they've won it overall with 2,560 points. So congratulations to you as well. The highest Game Week score went to David Osmond, who I nearly beat, funnily enough. He got 135 points in Game Week 34. I very nearly beat him with my 133. So yeah, he just pipped me to the post in that one. So yeah, well done to you, David. And also the cup winner as well. I completely forgot the cup was going on. But yeah, Shayan Kundu with Vardy's Nuts, I remember your team name very well, was the winner of the cup there. So congratulations to all of you, and thank you all so much if you're watching this video for supporting the channel this season. And yeah, so that wraps up this season review. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you've made it all the way, get subscribed to the channel so that you know when I'm making more content over for the next season. I'll probably be taking a bit of a break. I think all of us need a little bit of a break from FPL. It's been one of the most hectic and busiest, probably been the busiest season we've ever had, given the postponements, given the delays, given the World Cup in the middle of it all. It's been absolutely manic, and I think we all need to just chill out a little bit and have a break and come back to it in a fresh mind when the fixtures are announced. But yeah, just some overall lessons I've learned from this season. Not being afraid to go template. I know on this channel I've reiterated a lot of times that I play differently. I don't like going for a lot of the template picks, but this season has been completely different, where the template has been super strong and it's worked out super well. And I think it was explained perfectly with the final game of the season, where everyone heard that Haaland was out for Game Week 38. He was on the bench. So everyone did Haaland to Kane, and Kane ended up being the high scorer in the game week. It was the template obvious move, but it ended up being the best move. So I've made this the analogy of the Tour de France. If you ever watched the Tour de France, a cycling race, mostly the winner of the Tour de France is someone who stays near the herd. Maybe not the Tour de France, but of cycling races. It's someone who stays near the pack. They stay with the pack from most of the season, most of the race in this analogy, and then breaks away near the end and makes a last-ditch effort to try and win. That is how you win FPL, staying with the pack and then going different for the end. That's how the winner this season has done it, going for some differentials right near the end of the season, which made them pull away. Choosing nailed players as well. I was a bit fed up with rotation this season, so I will definitely my starting 11 for next season will be 11 nailed on players who are definitely going to play. Definitely going to keep that in mind. Having faith in the initial team, obviously saving the wildcarding in Game Week 2, don't do it. You spent all that time making a team in Game Week 1, unless you're plagued with injuries or you've really messed up with picking players who aren't even going to play, don't do it. Just because you've had one bad week, as I learned. If choosing nailed players in the team, it really means that, you're not really going to need your bench very much. So having those two spots, end spots on the bench being as cheap as possible, just bench fillers, and then also having just one starting goalkeeper and having the other goalkeeper as cheap as possible to make the starting 11 as good as possible, spending as much money there. And also not getting too caught up in the preseason hype. Focusing on the lineups. What are the lineups going to be? Not getting too sucked into who's doing really well in preseason, because preseason doesn't mean anything. We all had the likes of Neto and Bay in our teams, and they just did nothing. They did nothing the whole season. Just don't get too sucked into how good a player is playing in pre-season, because those games don't really mean an awful lot. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Thank you so much for all the support this season. It's been a real joy to make content for this game week. It's been really lovely to meet a lot of you at the FPL meets as well. I'll be sure to go to them in the future, and I'll see you all in the next FPL video.